Hello students, in my last video we have finished with the gymnosperms. That is, we are studying Unit 1 Diversity in the Living World. In that, Chapter 3 Plant Kingdom. So when we were studying about the plant kingdom, we started with the higher algae, then we came to the bryophytes, then the pteridophytes, then the gymnosperms, and now today we are going to be starting with angiosperms. Now what do you mean by the angiosperms? So the group of plants that are going to be giving flowers are going to be called as the angiosperms. In your surrounding, you must have seen a variety of flowers that are going to be there. Right from your food yielding crops to the beautiful flowers are going to be belonging to the angiosperms. The fruits that you eat are going to be the angiosperms. So angiosperms are going to be the most evolved plants in the plant kingdom with proper development of root, stem, leaves, seeds within the fruit which are produced from flowers. So let us study more about this group of plants, that is angiosperms. These angiosperms are going to be exceptionally large group of plants, and these are not only the larger plants, but these plants can be of the size of almost tiny microscopic organisms or microscopic plants like Wolffia to the tall trees like the eucalyptus, which are growing over 100 meters in height. So in this way, you can see that the angiosperms are having a very wide distribution, right from the small microscopic plants like the Wolffia to the large plants like the eucalyptus. These angiosperms are mainly divided into two classes, dicotyledon and monocotyledons. First one, talking about the dicotyledons. Dicotyledons are going to be those plants whose seeds are going to be having two cotyledons. Cotyledons are nothing but the embryonic leaves. You can see over here, these are the embryonic leaves which are going to be splitting into two equal halves. You can take the simple daily life examples like your groundnut or the peas or your dals, all these cereals like your tur dal or moong dal. All these can be split or it can be split into two equal halves are going to be called as the dicotyledons. These dicotyledonic plants who are going to be having the two cotyledons, even their leaf is going to be different. They are having the reticulate venation in leaves. In detail about the venation, we will study in our next lesson, that is morphology of flowering plants. But right now, understand that this is going to be the reticulate venation when one leaf is going to be having the veins that are going to be spreaded all through the leaf in a network like form. It is going to be called as the reticulate venation, as you can see here. So most all of the dicotyledons are having the reticulate venation in leaves. Plus, coming to their number of petals. So if you are talking about the number of petals, the dicotyledons are going to be usually tetramerous or pentamerous. What are tetramerous? So the flowers who are going to be having 4 petals or in the multiples of 4, that is maybe 4, 8, 16. In this manner, when they are having the multiples of 4, the petal number, they are called as tetramerous. In the same manner, if they are going to be in the multiples of 5, they are going to be called as the pentamerous flowers. So tetramerous means multiples of 4 and pentamerous means multiples of 5. So these are going to be the dicotyledons. If you are talking about the monocotyledons, they have only one cotyledon, a single cotyledon. You can take the example of your corn, that is your maize, or you can take your rice, jawar. All these seeds cannot be split into two equal halves, and they are going to be called as monocotyledon. One single cotyledon is present. The leaves of such plants are having parallel venation, like you can see over here. Like that is present in the sugar cane. Long leaves are going to be there, and on those long leaves, the lines that are present, the veins that are going to be present, that are going to be parallel to each other. So this type of venation is known as parallel venation. Even the flower number is trimerous, that is in the multiples of 3. So the number of petals can be 3, 6, 9, so on. Coming to the next part, that is coming to the parts of the flower that is involved the reproduction. The main reproductive organ of the plant is going to be the flower. So talking about the reproduction now, the main reproductive organ of the plant is the flower. Flower is a reproductive structure. The male and the female organs are going to be situated in this flower. The male sex organ in the flower is the stamen. Each stamen consists of a filament with an anther at its tip. Within the anther, the pollen mother cell divides by meiosis to produce microspores, which matures into pollen grains. So here you can see this is a flower. In this flower, you can see that these parts which are going to be there, this is going to be called as the filament, the tail-like thing, and at the top you are going to be having a swollen bud which is going to be called as the anther. Within these anthers, the microspores are present which are now called as the pollen grains. Coming to the female reproductive part, the female reproductive part is going to be called as the pistil. So this pistil is going to be consisting of the ovary. This part is going to be called as the ovary, which is a swollen part at its base, and then it is having a slender style, and top it is going to be having the stigma. So this ovary that is going to be there, within the ovary, the ovules are going to be present. Here, the ovule that is present, it is going to be, or an ovule has a megaspore mother cell that undergoes meiosis to form 4 haploid megaspores. But from these 3 megaspores, 3 of them are going to be degenerated, that is, they are going to be lost, and only one is going to be dividing to form the embryo sac. Now, next we can see that an embryo sac that is going to be there is going to be having 3-celled egg apparatus. So this is going to be the 3-cell egg apparatus, which is going to be having 1 egg and 2 syngrids, 3 antipodal cells and 2 polar nuclei. So as you can see here, this is going to be 1 egg and 2 syngrids. These are going to be the 3 antipodal cells, and these are going to be the 2 polar nuclei. So in this manner, the embryo sac is present. The polar nuclei eventually fuses to produce secondary nucleus. So pollen grains, now let us see how exactly the reproduction in the angiosperms is taking place. So in the reproduction we can see that, suppose here this is going to be your plant, in the plant the flower is produced. This flower is going to be consisting of the male part, which is the anther, and the female part, that is going to be your ovary, in which the ovules are present. The male part is going to be containing the microspores. So these microscopes, when matured, they are forming the pollen grains. Here, the female part. In the female part, the ovary that is there, it produces the embryo sac, or it is going to be producing a megaspore mother cell, which will now produce this egg apparatus that we studied just now, with one egg and two syngrids, three antipodal cells and two polar nuclei. This ovary is going to be attached to the pollen tube. So here it is nothing but your style. So the style you are going to be having over here. Now what happens? This pollen grain that is going to be there, this pollen grain is going to be coming and attaching to the stigma. So when it is going to be coming and attaching to the stigma, at that time the pollen gametes are going to be released within the stigma. Through the style, it reaches the egg. But here what is happening? In the microspore, they are going to be two polar gametes. That is, there are going to be two gametes in each pollen grain. So these are going to be dispatched into the pollen tube. So that is, through the pollen tube into the stigma, they are going to be dispatched and they are going to go and make the egg. But here what is happening? There are two gametes, and here also there are going to be present two polar nuclei are present and egg is present. So as a result, we can see that the pollen grains, two gametes that are there, that is the male gamete that is there, will fuse with the diploid secondary nucleus to form or to produce the primary endosperm nucleus. So one is as usual going to be going, so one male gamete as usual goes and fuses with the egg. This egg forms the zygote, and this zygote will develop into the seed. But there is one more gamete present, no? That gamete, what happens? It goes and fuses with the polar nuclei, and there it forms something known as triploid primary endosperm nucleus, or PEN. So one was already there, and two are already there, and one male gamete coming, so totally three. So triploid primary endosperm nucleus. Now let's see what happens next. Now because of the involvement of two fusions, which are those two fusions? One with the egg and one with the polar nuclei. So because of the involvement of two fusions, this event is termed as double fertilization. And this type of fertilization is going to be present only into angiosperms, and no other group of organisms are going to be having such type of fusion. This is the reason for the fruit formation, as we see. So this zygote that has developed, it develops into an embryo with one or two cotyledons, depending upon whether it is a monocot or whether it is a dicot. But this pen that is formed, that is primary endosperm nucleus, triploid primary endosperm nucleus, now this develops into endosperm, which provides the nourishment to the developing embryo. That is nothing but your fruit. Fruit is going to be present over the seed to provide the nourishment to the developing seed. So the syngrids and the antipodals are going to be degenerating after the fertilization. Now, during these events, what is happening now? The ovule that is going to be there, the ovules that were present inside the egg, it is going to be developing into seeds. And whereas the ovary that was going to be there, the outside that was going to be there, it will develop into the fruit with the help of primary endosperm nucleus. And hence the seeds are going to be formed enclosed by something known as the fruits which we eat. In this manner, we can see that the reproduction in the angiosperms is a very, very unique one which is going to be providing us food to eat. So this is going to be your angiosperms. With this, we finish the groups of the plants, that is going to be your higher algae, bryophyta, pteridophyta, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Angiosperms is going to be as such deleted from your syllabus due to COVID-19, but angiosperms is a very, very important group of plants, and in detail you have to study it not only in the next lesson, that is going to be morphology of the flowering plants, plus this reproduction in angiosperm is there in detail when you are going to go to your second year. In the PUC second year, the complete full lesson is there on the angiosperm reproduction. Hence, here I have given you a brief idea of how exactly the reproduction in the angiosperms is taking place. But for this year, you will not be having the angiosperms for your syllabus. By angiosperms, I only mean the reproduction and little bit of introduction that will not be there from your exam point of view. But in the next lesson, if we have to study, you will require this basic. So that is the angiosperms. Now coming to the last part of the lesson, it is going to be a summary of whatever we have studied until now. That is plant life cycle and alternation of generations. Let us see what is this. So here we can see that in plants, both haploid and diploid cells can divide by mitosis. This forms haploid and diploid plant bodies. Now you have to first understand what is a haploid and what is a diploid. For that, you need to understand the types of cell division, that is mitosis and meiosis. When I say meiosis, it is a type of the reproductive division wherein the number of chromosomes is going to be dividing into half. That is, it is going to be forming the n number. So by n number means here whenever the male and the female gametes are separate, only egg, only the microspore is n, and only the megaspore, only the egg or only the pollen grain is n. But when the fusion takes place, when the adult plant body is going to be present, it forms 2n, so double the number of chromosome. Only during reproduction, when male and female gamete is separate, at that time it is forming N. So that N is nothing but haploid. The reproductive form is known as the haploid form. And the diploid form is going to be the plant body, which is going to be the body with both male and female which are going to be present. The chromosomes have mated and they are going to be present into the plant body. So that is the haploid and the diploid. Based upon that, we are having three types of the patterns of the life cycle: haplontic, diplontic and haplodiplontic. So haploid body, plant body, is going to be usually produces gametes by the mitosis. Then after fertilization, zygote also divides by mitosis to produce diploid plant body. This produces haploid spores by meiosis. Spores divide by mitosis to form haploid plant body. So the alternation is going on. Diploid is going to be forming haploid, haploid is forming diploid. And when the haploid and diploid are completing, that will be the complete life cycle. So thus, during the life cycle of any sexually reproduction plant, there is an alternation of generation between gametophyte and sporophyte. Gametophyte means nothing but haploid. Single number of chromosome. Male and female is separate. Male body and female body is separate. And sporophyte is going to be when the male and female have clubbed, the embryo has formed. It is going to be the sporophyte. So based upon that, let's just see the first type of life cycle, that is haplontic. Haplontic life cycle we have seen in the case of the algae, higher algae if you remember. So in the higher algae we have seen that the sporophytic generation is going to be represented only by the zygote. Zygote undergoes meiosis to form haploid spores. They divide mitotically to form gametophyte. So the dominant photosynthetic phase is the free living gametophyte. So the gametophyte that is going to be there, the male and female are going to be remaining in N condition, haploid condition, and the male and the female are going to be mating or are going to be becoming into the zygote, and that duration is going to be only for a little time. And again by meiosis they are going to be producing the spores which are again N. So in the haploid generation or in the haplontic life cycle, the gametophyte is dominant phase, whereas the diploid phase is going to be recessive, or it is not going to be present for more time. So this type we have seen in algae, that is the wolffox, Spirogyra, and some species of the Clydomonas. The second one is the diplontic that we have just now seen. The diplontic life cycle is going to be best explained in the angiosperms and gymnosperms. So in the diploid we can see that the sporophyte is the dominant photosynthetic independent phase, and the gametophyte is going to be represented only by single to few celled haploid gametophyte. Like, let us take an example over here. So if you are taking the life cycle of the plant, that is the angiosperm, you can see that in plants majority of the life is going to be spent in this form, that is in a developed plant, into the 2N sporophytic generation, and the gametophytic generation or the spore producing generation is going to be only the flower. The flower is representing the gametophytic generation. So it is going to be only for a short period. Flowers are there only for a short period. It is producing the seed and flower is dying off. Plus, we can see that when these flowers are formed, these are going to be totally depending on the plant. This is exactly opposite of the haplontic life cycle. So angiosperm is the example of the diplontic life cycle. So example in the gametophytic is going to be there for a only small generation or a duration, and sporophyte is going to be dominating the life cycle. Example is going to be some species of algae like fucus, and all the seed bearing plants, that is gymnosperms and angiosperms, are going to be representing the diplontic life cycle. Then there is one more form, that is haplodiplontic life cycle. So in the haplodiplontic life cycle we can see that it is going to be an intermediate condition between the haplontic and diplontic, wherein both gametophyte and sporophyte are multicellular and often free living, like we have seen in the case of the bryophytes and the pteridophytes. So especially when I was telling you about the pteridophytes, you also remember the video that you have seen. In the pteridophytes, the gametophyte is going to be totally independent. The sporophyte is also totally independent. The spores are falling down, they are growing into a new individual. Then with the help of water, the fusion is taking place. Then the sporophyte is also individual. So both are going to be present in a different form, and both are dominant phases. So such type of life cycle is going to be called as the haplodiplontic life cycle. So haplontic life cycle is some of the algae. Then your diplontic life cycle is going to be your angiosperms and gymnosperms. And haplodiplontic life cycle is the bryophytes and the pteridophytes. With this, we end your chapter, that is Plant Kingdom. The question answers for this plant kingdom I will be sending in my next class. After completing writing of the notes of this chapter, write down the question answers into the fair book. In the next video, we will be starting with the next chapter related to the plants, that is related to the angiosperms, that is morphology of the flowering plants.